Hello, everyone. Good to see everybody again. It is a Monday right now. I don't know what day it is whenever you're watching this, but it's a Monday right now, and I'm feeling pretty good. So let's just jump into it. I've got a list of questions here from everyone, and we will see where it leads us today. All right, so Jessica Hodge, she asks, should I keep my business partner or work independently? Okay. As a nutrition coach, I originally opened an LLC. I had someone approach me wanting to invest in my company and in return own half of it. She was going to pay for marketing, web design, online, etc. After opening, signing a shareholders agreement, and getting a bank account, she becomes unresponsive. I couldn't get time with her. The website was mediocre, and she didn't commit any time to me or invest her finances any further. She said she was too busy with her other business. I offered to dissolve the corporation and want to just move forward on my own with my LLC. She is very successful. Her other business is a multi-million-dollar company, so I thought it would really benefit me to have that resource. Her response to my suggestion to dissolve is she asked to be a silent partner, adjust percentage of shares, and she could still fund certain aspects until she has time to focus on the rest. I don't know what to do. Great question, Jessica. So whenever you're dealing with partners, whether they're financial partners or active operating partners or whatever you're expecting out of your partners, it's always a disappointment when they don't do what you need them to do. So it happens all the time, unfortunately. It's a difficult thing that we all have to deal with. So I would say in this particular case, my first question is, what do you want from her, right? Like even if she's the silent partner, what did she bring to get up to this point? It doesn't sound like she brought much. If she did make financial investments, like you're going to have to make those right in some way. So you're either going to have to let her stay in as part of the equity in compensation for those, or you have to buy her out. Or, I mean, one thing you could do is just completely dissolve the entire business and start over again, depending on how far down the road you were. If you're not very far down the road, you could just say, cool, I'm just starting something new with a sort of new concept over here. If your operating agreement, shareholder agreement didn't specifically prohibit you from doing that, you technically, I think, could do that, depending on how you want to end the relationship. But it sounds to me that you should, you need to decide on what value she actually brings for you going forward. Because if she doesn't bring any value, then you're right, you are better off proceeding on your own, would be my guess, based on what you wrote here. Yeah, so I think that's a good recommendation for everybody. Whenever you're bringing on partners, you have to be very clear on what you're expecting each other to do. And then I think you also have to be very clear on how you separate. So your operating agreements should be clear on, like, this is what happens if things don't go right. This is how we get out of it. And it also helps to maintain control. If you are the originator of the plan, the idea, or whatever it is, you're the boss. Even if you're a 50-50 from a shareholder perspective, you can still be from a decision-making process, you could be the boss, like at the end of the day, even though you're 50-50. Even if you're less than that, you could be 20% and 80%, you could still be the person in charge. And if you're the person in charge, you can boot people. Like maybe that's a way to do it when you set up your agreements. I have a deal that I'm working on right now where we have 50-50 partners, me and another guy. I originated the concept and what we're doing. So basically, in our operating agreement, it says we're 50-50 partners economically and like from like a operational perspective. But if we need to raise more money or we need to bring on other partners to augment any activities, he gets diluted, not me. So I've kind of like established my base because I was the founder, I guess you could say. And so anything that needs to come in after him. So if he does everything, like if he just runs with it and like makes the thing totally awesome and I don't have to like ever worry about bringing anyone else in, he maintains his 50%. If he doesn't, then he will drop away. And there's all kinds of other details on like if he doesn't even do XYZ, then he won't ever even get the 50%. So anyway, yeah, it's really important to think about those things as you move along. All right, next question. Cupo Pieria. I probably butchered that name, sorry. As a new apparel and accessory company, do I need inventory before beginning to sell wholesale to retailers who I want to carry my product? I started selling surf shorts and bikinis and wanted to know if I should have product on hand before I ask retailers to sell my items in their store, or should I get their commitment first and then place bulk order with manufacturer? So look, it depends on a couple different factors. It depends on how long does it take you to get inventory once you order it, right? So if you can get inventory in 2 days, I would say don't carry any inventory because you can just buy it as you need it, right? Just in time situation. If it takes you 6 months, that's a completely different story, right? You'd have to buy to make sure that you can supply. I guess the other side of that is, even if it takes 6 months, if your retailers in the like sales cycle of that and what their expectation is such that it can take 6 months, maybe you still don't need to buy inventory in advance. Maybe you can get away with like if you're selling to people who are selling in a seasonal environment, maybe they're planning their summer catalog, as it were, 6 months in advance, so it doesn't really matter that you can just sell them based on these samples, and then you can place your orders based on that they ordered from you, and then 6 months from now it shows up and everything works out. So it really just depends on the timing if you need to buy inventory or not. I would suggest thinking hard about it to try to carry as little inventory as possible. You want just-in-time inventory as much as you can, meaning just-in-time, meaning like you don't have a big stock of inventory. There's many reasons for that. You don't have to pump as much money into it. You don't run the risk of buying a bunch of stuff that turns out nobody wants. You don't have to have the warehouse space. There's all kinds of advantages to just-in-time inventory, and so I would definitely suggest when you think through it to avoid inventory as much as possible and still be able to function and satisfy your customers appropriately. Okay. Nico Avila. Should I incorporate my business? Most likely an LLC in Florida, where I reside. Or are there more benefits to incorporating in a state like Delaware? I have started a YouTube channel and I'm looking to monetize it in the future. I will be most likely starting an LLC for it. I have heard and read that incorporating in a state like Delaware has a lot of tax benefits. Also, my channel name is the Chitty Chef, but I'm looking to possibly do other sorts of videos in the future. Do you think it would be best to make a generic business name and then file a DBA under the Chitty Chef name? Thanks for the input and have a happy new year. Great questions. Okay, pretty straightforward. Delaware LLCs are well known because they have a very, Delaware, the state, they made a conscious decision many years ago to make a very kind of pro-business legal system within their state. So that's why a lot of big companies, like big corporate companies, are incorporated in Delaware. We did a public offering and made a public company. Of course, that was incorporated in Delaware. Florida, on the other hand, also has a fantastic business environment and a business structure to incorporate under. Honestly, pretty synonymous with Delaware. I'm in Florida as well. Everything that I've done is incorporated in Florida. I would think Florida is probably sufficient for you, especially because you live in Florida. The only reason you might want to go to Delaware is if you're doing like a C Corp and going to do like a big public offering and all these sorts of things. For what you're doing, I would definitely recommend just staying in Florida just to keep it easy. They'll keep your CPA costs down and everything like that. Because you're probably going to just do an LLC with an S Corp election, which means that all the money flows to you. So that's easy enough. And then your other question was, DBA. Yeah, I mean, look, if you're going to do, like, technically, if you were going to do like a conglomerate style structure, you would have like a corporate entity that would be like Nico LLC or whatever, and then you'd have all these sub LLCs underneath that kind of represent all your different brands and all your other different businesses. You would do that for liability purposes so that you can keep liability contained within each one of those different business entities, as opposed to running DBAs on all of them. You could do that too. If the operations of the businesses and the potential liability of the businesses is all really kind of the same, because you're doing everything, or because the same team is doing everything, like, so if one company gets screwed up, then it would be the same, they're all at fault potentially. In that case, you could just do one company with a bunch of DBAs. That works just as well. It just depends on how different each company is going to be and how much liability one might have where another may not have. So yeah, I mean, honestly, at the phase that you're at, I would probably, if you wanted to just start with the Chitty Chef name as the name, start building that one. And then when that one's successful, if you want to put another company above it so you can kind of have this structure I was just talking about, you could always do that later. You don't have to like set it up that way in the first place. You know, or you could just make the generic one and then just do a bunch of DBAs if that's the plan. Just depends on what the different brands are. Okay, Shane Noble asks, have you heard of Profit First for contractors and your thoughts on that implementation to a business on the financial side of things with all the accounts and also with multiple location? It becomes so much work trying to move all the money around. What would be an easier way to simplify it? We are in the construction industry. We tried Profit First in our business and it started to work, but then it became a headache with all the accounts for each location. There were 5 accounts per location, and it was almost a full-time job just to have someone move the money in and out of the accounts. Maybe just thoughts on it, and maybe a simpler or something else to be done. Great question. I love Profit First conceptually. I think it's a great mindset and a great way to do it. The problem with Profit First is that in order to write a book about Profit First, you have to come up with a system because that's what you need to fill the pages with. And I agree with you. It's way overly cumbersome to actually execute Profit First the way they suggest doing Profit First, because you can accomplish literally the same thing. This is how I do it, and I was doing it before Profit First this way. I just take, like on my check register, really kind of a dumb way to do it, but I have my accounting people doing it this way, and it's super easy. I just create like fake entries essentially on our check register on the way where we keep how much money do we actually have. Like I'll just say, $10,000, is taken out of the account, even though it's not. It's still sitting in there, and then it accumulates in like a savings account in the accounting, in QuickBooks, whatever. Like you just essentially create like an expense that isn't really an expense, and then you just start siphoning money into that. So the money still sits in the same account. You don't have to move everything around, but when you look at how much money do you have in the account from your accounting perspective, it looks like you have less than you actually have. Now, granted, you have to go back and reconcile that and make sure it's all right at the end when you calculate your profit and all that sort of stuff. So it's not really an expense. It's just basically like, the best way to explain it is it's basically like just taking off that, if you got $100, you write a line with $10 to savings, and then now when you balance come up with what your available balance is, it's $10 less than what you had, and then it just kind of accumulates in the account. So when you log into your online banking and you look at it, you're going to have way more money in there than you're actually showing as spendable according to your internal accounting. That's how I would do it. It gets a little bit more complicated doing it as your companies get bigger and bigger and bigger. But talk to your CPA or your bookkeeper on how you would do that. I'm sure you guys can come up with some method that'll be very easily workable. Moving the money around the way Profit First suggests, I don't suggest that. It's very cumbersome. Felicia Guzelis, what's the best way to move away from the service I offer, healing, one-on-one with clients, into a membership format, and how do I price it appropriately? I have 18 courses and programs on healing and energy work that I can roll into a membership site. I want to offer this to people for a monthly fee with other teachers and healers that I bring in to do monthly teaching. I want to stay out of this. I don't have the revenue up front to pay people to host classes online, so I'm not sure how to phase into this. Would tiered pricing be best, a lifetime option? So this is a business model question. You're trying to move away from one-to-one, which is just hourly, your own time, which I commend you for doing, because you're right. Using your own time hour by hour, you can only make so much money, and you also have to work a lot, which you get bogged down, and that's all you're doing. So you're going in the right direction. I would say that your best bet is to think in terms of zero marginal cost. If you've never heard that term, Google it and look up zero marginal cost. The idea is that you produce a product, and a lot of coaching, well, not coaching, but courses, a lot of online courses fall into this model. Um, Zero marginal cost means there's no cost with adding another person into the mix. So as you add a new person into a group session online, let's say, like right now, actually, there could be 1 million people watching. It's costing me the same amount of time and same amount of cost associated with this time to present to one more person, zero marginal cost. There's no additional cost to add another person in there. So that means if you sell that person in a $25 a month membership, that's 100% profit to your bottom line at that point. So that's the model it sounds like you're going to. So I would just kind of think from that perspective. So instead of worrying about bringing in people and paying them in terms of like to do something like each time, how do I pay them to do something once and then you can reuse it over and over and sell it again and again. I'm not a big fan of the lifetime option, although I know someone who does very well with courses selling a lifetime option. She gets them in, at a lower price point and then converts so many of them, and the lifetime option is like $500 or something, and then they get access to everything, all the new stuff as it comes out, which I guess kind of works if you know what your lifetime value potentially is, and you can price your lifetime option at that point or higher. Then it's a good deal, I guess, because then you're not going to have you're not undercutting yourself at all. You're just basically what your lifetime value is on average. You're just forcing everyone to to just pay it up front, which is great. And tiered pricing would have to just depend on what you're what you're actually selling. So I'm happy to talk with you about this. This is an interesting one on how to structure that, for sure. Okay, Dina Butkovich. How do I start wholesaling wedding dresses to bridal shops? I'm a wedding dress designer and I have some interest from bridal shops about carrying my dresses in their stores. What do I need to know about beginning to wholesale, as I've never done it before? What sort of contracts do I need to have in place? What needs to be included in the contract? What questions do I need to ask the bridal stores? So don't worry about the legal side of this yet, I guess, unless you're that far. It sounds like, what do I know? It says you have some interest from bridal shops about carrying your dresses in their stores. So I would worry more about the operational side of that for initially. Like, I've done this. I've done this at least a couple times before I learned my lesson. I spend a lot of time thinking about one part of the process that I'm not actually at yet, and I spend a lot of time and then also a lot of money. I've actually built like legal documents and all these different things and spent tons of money. And then only to realize when I actually got through the process that what I had built didn't make any sense because the things veered in another direction when I actually started working and talking with the customer. So my recommendation would be meet with one of these bridal shops, somebody that you maybe feel like you've got a good rapport with, and just start working through the process. Like what's the next thing that has to happen? And they say, well, I guess normally we would place an order for 5 dresses. So I guess so you can really like work through the actual process with a customer, as opposed to just kind of making it up off the top of your head. And then as far as the legal side goes, once you know what the deal is, just map it out. Like, what's the deal? They're going to get 5 dresses. They're going to pay for it in 15 days. You're required to do all the alterations. They can't do it themselves. Like, whatever the deal is, like, bullet point it out. Like, there's way too much emphasis on like true, like, quote unquote contracts and agreements. Start with just bullet point it out so you and the other person understand in as much detail as you guys can come up with what you expect of each other. And then from there, you can make it into a legal document with an attorney if it needs to be, if it's that complicated of a thing. Because generally, if you're just selling, again, when you say what sort of contracts do I need to have in place, it really depends on the deal, right? If you were just selling retail or wholesale to retail, you could just send them an invoice that says, here, pay me this much, and then you send them the dresses and you're done. You don't have to really, there's not a lot to do if it's just that, but there might be more complexity that I'm not aware of. So bullet point out those details. If you come up with something, let me know, and then we can dig into those details. Name of submitter. Okay, Grant Elliott. How do I determine what amount of pay would be best for a new trainer for my online coaching business? I own an online back rehab coaching business. I am hiring some online trainers to help me grow the business. My company will obtain the clients and do all the admin work, and the trainers will train clients. How do I determine the best rate of pay for them? Good question. I guess it depends. The question I would ask is, how much am I charging my clients, right? If I'm charging my clients $100 an hour, generally speaking, if I'm doing all the marketing and all the accounting and I want to make a profit and all these different things, I would probably shoot to have my direct costs somewhere between like 20 and 40% maybe. It's probably where I would try to shoot out. I'd try to get it somewhere in there. So on $100 an hour, I would want to pay $20 an hour to $40 an hour. Like that's kind of where I would shoot if I'm pulling in all this other marketing stuff. I would always err on the side of starting low and trying to get, remember, your employees are really just a service provider. They're just a vendor, like any other vendor that you would go to. So you don't want to overpay just because they're a person, an individual. You want to think of them as a vendor, and that if you can get the right people at the right price to fit your model, then that's what you pay. So it depends. So again, what's the right price? It depends on what you're charging and what percentage of your kind of gross revenue you want that direct cost to be to make your business model work. You know, if you pay them $80 on $100 in revenue, now you only have $20 to make sales, to do all of your back-end accounting and admin work, to make a profit. Like that's not gonna, like it's probably not gonna happen. You know, you're gonna need a bigger margin than 20% in that if you're doing all of that work for them. So yeah, so just map it out. Just, you know, revenue $100 per hour. This much goes to direct cost, the coach. This is how much I spend on sales and marketing. Don't forget to put that one in there. That's an important one. Give it its own line item per hour, per client. I'm going to spend this much in sales and marketing, and then so on down the line. And here's my overhead, my SG&A, as they say. And then and profit. Put your profit in there. 20% for sure. If it's like a service business, at least 20%. And then hopefully some of your big fat marketing budget and sales budget will become so efficient that some of that will flow to your profit as well. Yeah, so that's what I would suggest, to go through that process. Okay, that is it, everyone. I don't have any other questions on my list here. I'm always available to any of you at any time because I love AO and I love entrepreneurship. So reach out to Shirley, reach out to Sean if you want to get in touch with me. I'm happy to meet with anybody to talk about whatever they've got going on with them. So thanks very much. See you all soon.